The wind on Velar 7 could kill a man in 20 minutes. Ho knew this because he had been walking through it for 12 hours. His boots crunched against the frozen ground. His fingers had stopped hurting 2 hours ago, which was not a good sign. The cold had moved past pain and into something worse, numbness. He was a medic. He knew what frostbite looked like. He knew he was close to it. The human camp appeared through the swirling snow like a dream. Small tents dotted the ice plain, their fabric walls glowing soft orange from the heating units inside. Ho had never been so happy to see anything in his entire life. His patrol had gone badly. A sudden storm had separated him from his squad. His radio had frozen. For 6 hours he had walked alone through white nothing, following his compass and praying he was going the right direction. Now he was here, alive. He wanted to laugh, but his face was too cold to move properly. The camp was quiet. Most soldiers were asleep at this hour. Ho stumbled between the tents, looking for his assigned quarters. The tents all looked the same in the darkness, simple domes of thermal fabric, each one marked with a small number plate near the entrance. His vision was blurry, his thoughts were slow. Hypothermia did that to a person. He knew he needed to get warm immediately. Medical training screamed inside his foggy brain, core temperature dropping, confusion setting in. Find shelter now. He saw a tent. The number plate was covered in frost, unreadable, but warm light glowed from inside. The heating unit was running. That was all that mattered. Ho pulled open the entrance flap and stepped inside. The warmth hit him like a wave. His frozen skin began to sting as blood rushed back to the surface. He groaned with relief. The tent was simple, a sleeping mat on the floor, some cushions piled in the corner, a small heating unit humming against the wall. It smelled different from his usual quarters, but he was too exhausted to care. He pulled off his frozen outer jacket and let it fall to the floor. His boots came next, then his gloves. His fingers were white but not black, no frostbite. He would keep all his digits, small victories. The sleeping mat looked like the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Thick cushions, soft fabric. Ho did not bother to undress further. He simply collapsed onto the mat, pulled a blanket over himself, and closed his eyes. Sleep took him in seconds. He did not dream. He was too tired for dreams. His body simply shut down, focusing all its energy on warming itself, on surviving. His heart beat steadily. His breathing deepened. Heat radiated from his skin as his core temperature slowly climbed back to normal. Ho slept like the dead. He did not know that this tent was wrong. He did not know that this space had been prepared for someone else, someone very important. The cushions beneath him were not military issue. They were woven from silk that cost more than his yearly salary. The heating unit was not standard equipment. It was a gift from the Eye Queen to herself, a small comfort on this frozen world she hated. This tent was her private meditation chamber, a sacred space. No living being was permitted to enter without her direct invitation. The punishment for trespassing was death. But Ho knew none of this. He simply slept. Outside, the Eye delegation moved through the camp in careful formation. 20 guards surrounded a single figure, tall, elegant, and wrapped in robes of deep purple. Queen Lyra of the Eye Hive walked with the easy grace of a predator. Her scales shimmered in the faint starlight, shifting between silver and pale blue. Her eyes were gold with vertical pupils, and they missed nothing. She hated this planet. The cold was a constant enemy to her kind. The Eye were cold-blooded. Their ancient had been volcanic, warm, alive with heat from the planet's core. But that world was gone now, destroyed in a war that happened before Lyra was born. Her people had scattered across the stars, always searching for warmth they could never truly find. Velar 7 was the worst posting imaginable, but the humans had requested this meeting place, and Lyra had agreed. The treaty negotiations were too important to refuse over something as simple as weather. Still, she was miserable. Her bones ached. Her thoughts moved slowly. Cold made her weak and she hated weakness. Her guards stopped at the edge of the human camp. Protocol required that she enter her meditation tent alone. It was the one place she could escape the endless demands of rule, the constant watching eyes. Her guards took positions around the perimeter, facing outward. Lyra walked toward her tent. Her steps were slow, heavy. She wanted nothing more than to sit beside the heating unit and let its warmth seep into her scales. Then she stopped. Something was different. Lyra tilted her head, her senses sharpening. The air coming from her tent was warmer than it should be, much warmer. The heating unit was good, but not this good. There was something else inside, something generating heat. Her first thought was a malfunction. Perhaps the unit was overheating. Perhaps it would explode. She should call her guards. But then she felt it more clearly, the specific quality of this warmth. It was not mechanical. It was organic, living, a steady pulse of heat like a heartbeat made of fire. Curiosity replaced caution. Lyra had ruled for 60 years. She had faced assassins, wars, and political enemies that would make most beings weep with terror. She was not afraid of whatever waited inside her tent. She pulled open the entrance flap and stepped inside. The human lay sprawled across her meditation cushions. He was young, with black hair and a peaceful face. His uniform marked him as a low-ranking soldier, a medic, based on the symbols. His chest rose and fell with deep, steady breaths. He was asleep, completely asleep, in her private sanctuary. Lyra should have been furious. This was an insult, a violation. Her guards would execute him the moment she gave the order. But she did not give the order. Instead, she stood there, staring at him. The warmth pouring off his body was incredible. Humans maintained a constant internal temperature of 37 degrees. She had read this in reports but never truly understood what it meant. Now she understood. He was a living sun. Lyra moved closer, one step, then another. The warmth grew stronger as she approached. Her cold, stiffened muscles began to relax. Her thoughts grew clearer. Her bones stopped aching. She knelt beside him. He did not wake. Her hand reached out, hovering above his chest. She could feel the heat rising from him like steam from hot water. Every cell in her body screamed for more. Queen Lyra, ruler of the Eye Hive, conqueror of 3 star systems, lay down beside a sleeping human soldier. She pressed her body against his side and felt his warmth wrap around her like a blanket. For the first time in 30 years, she began to purr. The purr surprised her. It came from deep inside her chest, a vibration she had not felt since childhood. Young Eye purred when they were warm and safe, curled against their mothers in the heated nurseries. Adult Eye did not purr. Queens certainly did not purr. It was undignified. It was weakness. Lyra did not care. The human's warmth soaked into her scales like water into dry sand. Every part of her body that touched him felt alive again. Her tail, usually stiff and aching in the cold, curled lazily against her leg. Her shoulders dropped from their permanent tension. Even her breathing changed, becoming slower, deeper, more relaxed. She had forgotten what this felt like, true warmth. Not the pale imitation from heating units, not the brief comfort of hot food. This was real, constant, endless heat. The human's body produced it without effort, without fuel, without cost. It simply poured from him like light from a star. Lyra pressed closer. The human murmured something in his sleep. His language, Korean, she remembered from briefings, sounded soft and flowing. She did not understand the words, but the tone was peaceful. He shifted slightly, and his arm moved. It landed across her back. Lyra froze. Her entire body went rigid. No one touched the queen. No one. Her guards would die before allowing it. Her advisors kept careful distance. Even her own family, what remained of them, showed affection only through words and formal gestures. But this human was asleep. He did not know what he was doing. His arm simply rested against her, heavy and warm, holding her against him like she was something precious. Lyra's throat tightened with an emotion she could not name. She should leave. She knew this. Every moment she stayed was a risk. If her guards discovered her like this, the scandal would be enormous. The human would be killed. Her enemies at court would use this moment against her forever. She was being foolish. She was being weak. But the warmth. Lyra closed her eyes and pressed her face against the human's chest. His heart beat steadily under her cheek, a slow drum of life. His body heat wrapped around her like an embrace. The purr in her chest grew louder. Just a little longer, she told herself, just a few more minutes, then she would leave. She did not leave. Time passed. Lyra drifted in a state between sleep and waking, more relaxed than she had been in decades. The cold that lived in her bones finally faded. The constant tension in her muscles melted away. She felt young again, safe again, like a child curled in the nursery heat. The human shifted. His breathing changed. He was waking up. Lyra should have pulled away. She should have stood, composed herself, prepared an explanation or a threat. Instead, she stayed perfectly still, watching his face through half-closed eyes. His eyelids fluttered. A small groan escaped his lips. Then his eyes opened, dark brown, warm like his skin, and looked directly into hers. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Lyra watched emotions flicker across his face. Confusion came first, then recognition. He knew what she was, even if he did not know who. Fear followed, quick and sharp. His body tensed beneath her. His heartbeat jumped faster. This was the moment. He would scream or fight or try to run. Her guards would hear. They would rush in and find their queen lying on top of an enemy. Blood would follow. Politics would follow. Everything would become complicated. But the human did something unexpected. His fear faded. His body relaxed. And then, still half asleep, he spoke. "You're cold." The words were simple, obvious, ridiculous given the situation. Lyra had been called many things in her 60 years of rule: cold-blooded killer, ice queen, the frozen throne, but never had someone said it like this, with concern, with care, like her coldness was a problem they wanted to solve. Before she could respond, his arm tightened around her. He pulled her closer, tucking her against his chest like she was something fragile that needed protection. His other hand came up and rested on her back, spreading more warmth across her scales. Lyra stopped breathing. "Better," he murmured, already sinking back towards sleep. His eyes closed. His breathing deepened. Within seconds, he was unconscious again, holding an alien queen like she was a beloved pet. Lyra did not move. She could not move. Her mind raced through possibilities and explanations. He was delirious. He was confused. He thought she was someone else. There was no way a human soldier, a medic of low rank, would casually embrace the supreme ruler of an alien empire. But he had, without hesitation, without fear. He had felt her cold scales against his skin, and his first instinct was to help. The purr in Lyra's chest grew so loud she could hear it echoing off the tent walls. This was dangerous. This human was dangerous. Not because he was strong or armed or clever, but because he was kind. Kindness was something Lyra did not know how to fight. She had built walls against anger, against ambition, against every political weapon her enemies could throw. But kindness, simple, unthinking warmth offered freely without expectation. She had no defense against that. Lyra should have left then. She knew it. Every rational part of her brain screamed at her to extract herself from this human's arms, to return to her guards, to pretend this never happened. Instead, she pressed her face against his chest, listened to his heartbeat, and let herself feel warm. The hours passed. The storm outside grew worse, then faded. The camp remained quiet. No one came looking for the queen. Her guards assumed she was meditating, and they would never disturb her meditation. No one came looking for the human. His squad assumed he was lost in the storm, and search parties would not begin until morning. For one night, they existed outside of politics, outside of duty, outside of the vast gulf between their species. They were simply two beings sharing warmth in a cold place. Lyra did not sleep. She could not. Her mind was too full of questions, but she rested, truly rested, for the first time in 30 years. Her body recharged. Her thoughts cleared. The constant, grinding exhaustion of cold finally lifted from her shoulders. When the first light of dawn touched the tent walls, she knew her time was ending. Soon her guards would come. Soon this moment would shatter into politics and consequences. But for now, for one more minute, she stayed. The human stirred again. His arms tightened around her briefly, a sleep reflex, like he was afraid she would leave. The gesture was so innocent, so unguarded, that something cracked inside Lyra's chest. She had conquered 3 star systems. She had ordered executions without blinking. She had watched worlds burn and felt nothing but satisfaction. This one sleeping human made her feel more than all of that combined. The tent flap tore open. Commander stood in the entrance, weapon raised, eyes wide with horror. Behind her, the morning light spilled into the tent like cold water. "My queen's voice was a strangled scream. "Get away from." She stopped, her weapon lowered slightly. Her brain tried to process what she was seeing. The queen of the eye hive lay curled against a human soldier like a content animal. Her tail was wrapped around his leg. Her face was pressed against his chest, and she was purring. Purring. Lyra lifted her head slowly, meeting her commander's eyes. In that moment, she made a choice. She could pretend this was an attack, that the human had forced himself upon her. She could order his death and bury this moment forever. Or she could tell the truth. "Commander," Lyra said, her voice calm and clear, "lower your weapon. You will not harm this human." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "My queen, he kept me warm." Lyra sat up slowly, her scales still tingling from the human's heat. "That is all. He kept me warm." The human was awake now, his brown eyes wide with fear as he stared at the armed alien in the doorway. He did not move. He did not speak. He simply lay there, waiting to learn if he would live or die. Lyra looked down at him. Her face was unreadable. "What is your name?" she asked. His voice was rough from sleep. "Ho." She nodded once, memorizing it. Then she stood, straightened her robes, and walked toward the tent entrance with all the dignity of a queen. She paused beside. "This human is not to be harmed," she said quietly. "That is a royal command." And she walked out into the cold morning light, leaving chaos behind her. Ho sat alone in the tent, trying to understand what had just happened. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The alien commander still stood in the doorway, her weapon lowered but her eyes burning with barely controlled rage. "You will stay here," said. Her voice was like ice cracking. "If you move, I will kill you." Ho nodded. He did not trust his voice to speak. Turned and followed her queen into the morning light. The tent flap fell closed behind her, leaving Ho alone with his racing thoughts. What had he done? The memories came back slowly, stumbling through the storm, finding a tent, collapsing onto the mat, and then warmth, strange warmth, something pressed against his chest, something purring. He had thought it was a dream, a fever dream from the hypothermia. He had felt something cold against his skin and instinctively pulled it closer, wanting to share his heat. That was what medics did. They helped people. They kept people warm. But that had not been a person. That had been the alien queen. Ho dropped his head into his hands and groaned. He was going to die. There was no other possible outcome. He had touched an alien ruler. He had held her. He had pulled her against his chest like she was a cold child who needed comfort. Whatever alien laws governed such things, he had surely broken all of them. Minutes passed, then hours. Ho waited, listening to the sounds outside. Voices shouted in the alien language. Footsteps crunched through the snow. Something that sounded like an argument grew louder, then faded. The tent flap opened again. Ho looked up, expecting soldiers. Instead, he saw a familiar face. Private Captain Sung stepped inside, his expression a mixture of relief and confusion. "You're alive. We thought the storm took you." Captain Ho stood quickly, his legs unsteady. "I'm sorry, sir. I got separated from my squad. My radio froze. I walked through the storm for hours, and when I found the camp, I entered the wrong tent." Sung's face changed. The relief faded into something more complicated. "Yes," the captain said slowly. "The wrong tent. The Eye Queen's private tent, her meditation chamber, the place where no one is allowed to enter without invitation." Ho's stomach dropped. "Sir, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "I believe you." Sung rubbed his forehead like he was developing a headache. "The problem is what happened after you entered." "I fell asleep, that's all. I was hypothermic and exhausted, and I fell asleep. And then the Queen entered. I didn't know she was there until I woke up. With her lying on your chest." Ho had no response to that. Sung sighed heavily. "The I delegation is in chaos. Commander is demanding your execution. She says you assaulted the Queen. Several other advisors are supporting her." "I didn't assault anyone." Ho's voice cracked with fear. "She was there when I woke up. I didn't even know what was happening. I thought I was dreaming." "I know." Sung held up a hand to calm him. "The Queen herself has confirmed your version of events. She says you were asleep when she entered, and that you remained asleep through most of the night." "Then why am I being threatened with execution?" The captain was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. "Because when you woke up, Private, you did not pull away from her. Witnesses say you held her closer." Ho felt his face flush with embarrassment and terror. "She was cold. I was half asleep. I didn't think. My training says to share body heat with anyone suffering from cold exposure. She is not a human soldier. She is an alien queen." "My hands didn't know that." The absurdity of his own words hit Ho immediately. He wanted to laugh. He wanted to cry. He had accidentally cuddled the ruler of an alien empire because his medical training told him to keep people warm. Sung stared at him for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. "You might be the luckiest or the unluckiest man alive," the captain said. "The Queen is speaking to her council now. She is defending you." Ho blinked. "Defending me?" "She refuses to call for your punishment. She says you offered warmth without knowing who she was, without expecting anything in return. She says this was an act of kindness, not aggression." "She's protecting me." "It appears so." Sung shook his head slowly. "I have been a diplomat for 15 years. I have never seen anything like this. The Eye are proud beyond measure. They do not admit weakness. They do not accept help from lesser species. And yet their queen is standing before her entire court, telling them that a human soldier treated her with more genuine care than anyone in her own empire." Ho sat back down on the sleeping mat. His legs would not support him anymore. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we wait." Sung moved toward the tent entrance. "Stay here, don't speak to anyone. I will return when there is news." He left, the tent flap closed. Ho was alone again. The hours that followed were the longest of his life. He could not eat. He could not sleep. He sat on the same mat where he had held an alien queen and wondered if those would be the last peaceful moments he ever experienced. Memories kept surfacing. The weight of her body against his chest, the strange texture of her scales, smooth and cool at first, then warming from his heat. The vibration of her purr, deep and constant, like a cat but bigger, stronger. The way she had pressed her face against him like she was starving for his warmth. She had been cold, not just physically cold, but cold in some deeper way. Lonely, isolated. He had felt it in the desperate way she clung to him, like he was the first warm thing she had touched in years. Maybe he was. Ho knew almost nothing about the Eye. They were cold-blooded. They came from a volcanic world that no longer existed. They had conquered half a dozen star systems and were feared throughout the galaxy. Beyond that, he only knew what everyone knew. They were dangerous, proud, and utterly alien. But the Queen had not felt dangerous lying against his chest. She had felt tired. She had felt cold. She had felt like someone who needed help and had finally found it. The tent flap opened. Private stepped inside, her face pale with worry. Ho, she rushed to his side. Are you okay? I just heard what happened. The whole camp is talking about it. I'm fine. Ho managed a weak smile, just waiting to find out if I'm going to be executed. They won't execute you, sat down beside him. The Queen won't let them. You've heard something. Everyone has heard something, lowered her voice. The Queen just made a public statement. She told her entire court that you are not to be harmed. She said, paused, her eyes wide. She said you offered warmth without expectation, and that such kindness should be honored, not punished. Ho let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. So I'm not going to die. You're not going to die, shook her head slowly. But Ho, what did you do to her? The Queen of the Eye doesn't defend anyone. She doesn't show mercy. She's called the Ice Queen for a reason, and now she's protecting a random human medic who wandered into her tent. Ho looked down at his hands, the same hands that had pulled an alien queen against his chest, the same hands that had offered warmth without thinking, without knowing, without expecting anything in return. I don't know, he said honestly. I just kept her warm. Outside, the alien court was still in chaos, but somewhere in that chaos, a queen was thinking about warmth, thinking about kindness, thinking about a human with gentle hands who had held her like she mattered. And somewhere in her cold heart, something was beginning to change. The Eye Council chamber was not designed for comfort. It was designed for fear. Tall pillars of black stone rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Cold light filtered through narrow windows, casting harsh lines across the faces of the assembled advisors. At the far end of the room, on a throne carved from volcanic glass, sat Queen Lyra. She looked every inch the ruler she was meant to be. Her robes were formal now, heavy with symbols of rank. Her scales had been polished until they shone like metal. Her eyes were hard and cold, revealing nothing of the woman who had purred against a human's chest just hours before. Commander stood before her, trembling with barely controlled rage. My queen, this cannot stand. His voice echoed through the chamber. A human invaded your private sanctuary. He touched you. He held you like a common. She stopped herself, but the word hung in the air. This is an insult to your honor, an insult to our entire empire. Lyra listened without expression. Around the chamber, other advisors murmured their agreement. Some nodded openly. Others watched the queen with careful eyes, waiting to see which way power would flow. The human claims it was an accident, one advisor said. He entered the wrong tent. And we should believe him, turned sharply. He is a soldier. Soldiers do not make mistakes like this. He must have known what he was doing. He was hypothermic. Another voice joined the debate. The human camp reports he walked through the storm for hours. His body temperature was dangerously low when he arrived. That excuses nothing. It explains his confusion. The arguments continued, growing louder, more heated. Lyra let them talk. She sat perfectly still on her throne, watching her advisors tear at each other like animals fighting over scraps. Finally, she raised one hand. Silence fell immediately. Commander, Lyra's voice was calm, measured, deadly. You demand this human's execution. On what grounds? Straightened. He trespassed in your sacred space. He touched your royal person without permission. These crimes carry the penalty of death under our law. And yet I entered the tent willingly. I chose to lie beside him. I remained there for hours of my own free will. Lyra tilted her head slightly. Should I also be executed? The chamber went very quiet. His face twisted with confusion and fear. "My queen, that is different." "How is it different?" "You are the queen. Your actions are above question." "Then my choices must be respected." Lyra leaned forward on her throne. "I chose to enter that tent. I chose to stay. If we execute the human for an accident while ignoring my deliberate actions, we expose ourselves as hypocrites. Our enemies will say the I have no true justice, only power." Several advisors shifted uncomfortably. This was not the argument they had expected. From the back of the chamber, a new voice spoke. It was the human captain, Sung, who had been allowed to observe the proceedings. "If I may speak, Your Majesty." Lyra nodded. Sung stepped forward carefully. He knew he was walking through a minefield of alien politics. One wrong word could destroy everything. "Private Ho is a medic," he said. "He is trained to help people, to save lives. When he woke and found someone cold against his body, his instincts took over. He tried to share his warmth. He did not know who he was holding. He simply knew that someone was cold and needed help." Laughed harshly, "A convenient excuse." "It is not an excuse, it is the truth." Sung kept his voice steady. "Humans are warm-blooded. We maintain a constant body temperature. Sharing that warmth with those who need it is deeply natural to us. It is how our ancestors survived. It is how we care for our sick and our children." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Among my people, holding someone who is cold is not an insult. It is an act of kindness, an act of care. Private meant no disrespect to your queen. He simply helped her, because that is what humans do." The chamber was silent. Some advisors looked thoughtful, others looked angry, a few looked almost curious. Lyra watched the human captain with unreadable eyes. "You are saying," she said slowly, "that among your species what the private did would be considered honorable." "Yes, Your Majesty, very honorable." "Even touching a stranger without permission." Sung hesitated. "Among humans, when someone is in danger from cold, permission is assumed. We call it implied consent. If someone is freezing, you save them first and apologize later." A murmur ran through the eye advisors. Some of them looked disturbed by this idea. Others seemed to consider it. Stepped forward again. "This is irrelevant. Human customs do not override I law." "Perhaps not." Lyra's voice cut through the argument like a blade. "But they explain the human's intentions, and intentions matter under our law." She stood from her throne. Every eye in the chamber followed her. "I will tell you what happened in that tent," Lyra said. "I entered and found a sleeping human. His warmth called to me in a way I cannot explain. I chose to lie beside him. I chose to stay. When he woke, he did not know who I was. He only knew I was cold, and so he held me closer." She paused, letting her words sink in. "In 60 years of rule, no one has ever offered me warmth without expecting something in return. This human did. He asked for nothing. He wanted nothing. He simply gave what he had because I needed it." Lyra looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of her advisors one by one. "I will not execute someone for kindness. I will not punish someone for doing what I desperately needed and could not ask for. If this makes me weak in your eyes, then so be it. But the human Ho will not be harmed." The chamber erupted into chaos. Advisors shouted at each other. His face twisted with rage, but Lyra ignored them all. She stepped down from her throne and walked toward the exit. She paused beside Captain Sung. "Your medic," she said quietly. "He is not like other humans I have met." Sung bowed carefully. "He is not like other humans I have met either, Your Majesty." Lyra nodded once. Then she continued walking, her guards falling into formation around her. That night, after the chaos had settled and the arguments had faded to whispers, a royal messenger arrived at the human camp. He carried a single scroll, sealed with the Queen's personal mark. Private brought the message to Ho's tent. Her hands were trembling. "It's for you," she said, "from the Queen herself." Ho took the scroll with numb fingers. He broke the seal and unrolled the paper. The message inside was short, written in careful human standard. "Your presence is requested at the royal quarters. Come alone. Speak to no one of this summons." There was no signature. There was no explanation, just an order from the most powerful being on the planet. Ho looked up her eyes were wide with fear. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Ho stared at the message for a long moment. He thought about the Queen lying against his chest. He thought about her scales warming from his heat. He thought about the desperate way she had clung to him, like he was the first good thing to happen to her in decades. He stood up and reached for his jacket. "I'm going to go," he said. And he walked out into the cold night toward whatever waited for him in the Queen's chambers. The royal quarters were warm. That was the first thing Ho noticed as the guards led him through the entrance, not warm like his tent with its struggling heating unit. This was real warmth, deep and constant, the kind that seeped into bones and made muscles relax. The guards stopped at an inner doorway. One of them spoke to him in heavily accented human standard. "The Queen waits inside. You will enter alone." Ho nodded. His heart was beating fast, but his hands were steady. He had survived the storm. He had survived the political chaos. Whatever happened now, he would face it the same way, one moment at a time. He stepped through the doorway. The chamber beyond was smaller than he expected. No throne, no political symbols, just a comfortable room with thick carpets on the floor and soft lights glowing in the walls. A large window looked out over the frozen plains, dark now under a sky full of stars. Queen Lyra stood by the window, her back to him. She had changed from her formal robes into something simpler, a loose garment of dark blue that moved when she breathed. Her scales caught the starlight and scattered it like tiny mirrors. "Close the door," she said without turning. Ho obeyed. The door clicked shut behind him and they were alone. Silence stretched between them. Ho waited, unsure what to do. He was a soldier, a medic, a man of low rank standing in the private chambers of an alien queen. Every instinct told him to bow, to kneel, to make himself small. Instead, he stayed standing. Something told him that was not what she wanted. Finally, Lyra turned. Her golden eyes found his, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then her shoulders dropped slightly, and something in her expression changed. "You are not afraid of me," she said. It was not a question, but Ho answered anyway. "I was afraid before, in the tent, when your commander came. But not now." Ho thought about it. "You protected me. You could have let them kill me. You didn't, I think. I think maybe you are not someone I need to fear." Lyra made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was soft and surprised, like she had not expected to make it. "You are either very brave or very foolish," she said. "I cannot decide which." "My captain says the same thing." This time she did laugh, a real laugh, warm and genuine. Ho felt something loosen in his chest. She was beautiful when she laughed. Not beautiful like a human woman, but beautiful like a sunset, like a storm, like something vast and powerful that had chosen, for just a moment, to be gentle. Lyra moved away from the window. She walked to a low seat covered in cushions and sat down, folding her legs beneath her with fluid grace. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a spot on the floor nearby. "We need to talk." Ho sat. The carpet was soft beneath him, still carrying the warmth of the heated floor. He rested his hands on his knees and waited. Lyra studied him for a long moment. Her eyes traced his face, his shoulders, his hands. He felt like a specimen under examination, but he did not look away. "Tell me about your species," she said finally. "Tell me about warmth." The question surprised him. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." Her voice was quiet now, almost vulnerable. "Among my people, warmth is rare and precious. Ours was volcanic. We bathed in hot springs and slept on heated stones. But that world is gone. We have spent generations drifting through cold space, settling on cold planets, never finding what we lost. She looked down at her hands. The eye do not touch each other. Our scales conduct heat away from our bodies. When we embrace, we make each other colder. Physical affection is painful for us, isolating. We have learned to live without it. Ho felt his heart ache. He thought of his own family, his mother's hugs, his father's hand on his shoulder, his sister's playful punches. He thought of the casual warmth humans shared without thinking. A handshake, a pat on the back, a hug between friends. He could not imagine living without that. For humans, he said slowly, warmth is part of who we are. We are born from our mother's bodies, warm and close. We sleep in piles as children. We hold hands with people we love. We hug each other when we are sad or happy or afraid. Lyra listened without moving. Our bodies make heat constantly, Ho continued. We cannot help it. When we touch someone, our warmth flows into them. When we hold someone, we share everything we have. It is. I do not know how to explain. It is not just physical. It is emotional, spiritual. To hold someone is to say, I am here. You are not alone. Lyra closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were bright with something that might have been tears. That is what I felt, she said. In your tent, when you held me, I felt, not alone for the first time in 30 years. Ho did not know what to say, so he said nothing. He simply waited. Lyra took a deep breath. I have ruled for 60 years. I have commanded fleets and conquered worlds. I have done things that would horrify you if you knew them, but I have never, her voice broke slightly. I have never been held, not since I was a child, not since the warmth of my was still a memory in my mother's scales. She looked at him directly, and he saw the depth of loneliness in her eyes. When you pulled me closer, you gave me something I did not know I was missing. You gave me warmth without condition, without expectation, without politics or games or hidden purposes. You just held me. Ho felt tears prickling at his own eyes. This powerful queen, this ruler of empires, was sitting before him with her heart open, telling him things she had probably never told anyone. I did not know who you were, he said honestly. I just felt someone cold against me. I wanted to help. I know, Lyra smiled sadly. That is what made it precious. You did not help me because I was the queen. You helped me because I was cold. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who understood each other, even across the vast gulf between their species. Finally, Lyra spoke again. I asked you here to thank you, but also to ask you something. Anything, Ho said and meant it. Lyra hesitated. For the first time since he had met her, she looked uncertain, vulnerable, almost afraid. Would you stay tonight? She asked. Not for politics, not for alliance, just, would you stay? Would you let me feel warm again? Ho looked at this queen who had conquered star systems, who commanded armies, who held the power of life and death over millions. And he saw what she really was. A person who had been cold and alone for so long that she had forgotten what warmth felt like. He stood up slowly. He walked to where she sat, and he held out his hand. Yes, he said simply, I will stay. Lyra took his hand. Her scales were cool against his palm. But as he helped her stand, as she moved closer and pressed her face against his chest, he felt her begin to warm. That night, for the second time, the Queen of the Eye fell asleep against a human's heartbeat. But this time, it was not an accident. This time, it was a choice. And somewhere in the cold darkness of space, something new was beginning. Something that would change everything for both their peoples. Neither of them knew it yet, but they would. Word spread faster than anyone expected. In the halls of power across a dozen star systems, whispers passed from mouth to ear, growing louder with each telling. The Eye Queen had taken an interest in a human. Not just any human, a soldier of low rank, a medic with no political connections, no special skills, no particular importance. The galaxy paid attention. 2 months after that first night, Captain Sung stood before the treaty negotiation table and watched history change. The I delegation had been cold and dismissive when negotiations began. They viewed humans as young, weak, and barely worth their time. The treaty talks had stalled repeatedly over minor details. Every session felt like pulling teeth from a stone. Now everything was different. The I ambassador leaned forward in her seat, actually listening when Sung spoke. Her advisors took careful notes instead of whispering among themselves. Questions were asked with genuine curiosity instead of thinly veiled contempt. "Your proposal for cultural exchange," the ambassador said. "Please explain it further." Sung kept his expression neutral, but inside he was amazed. This was the first time in weeks that an I official had asked for more information instead of dismissing an idea immediately. "We propose exchange programs between our medical teams," he said. "Human doctors would visit I hospitals. I healers would visit human stations. Both sides would learn from each other." The ambassador nodded slowly. "And these human doctors, they are all warm-blooded like your medic. They maintain constant body temperature." "Yes, all humans do." A murmur ran through the I delegation. Some of them exchanged glances. A few made notes. "This could be beneficial," the ambassador said carefully. "Our elderly struggle greatly in the cold. Our hospitals are often not warm enough for proper healing. If human medical staff could assist." The sentence trailed off, but Sung understood. The I were cold-blooded. Cold slowed their healing, weakened their immune systems, shortened their lives. Human body heat might actually help I patients recover faster. One soldier's kindness was reshaping galactic politics. Back at the human camp, Ho was struggling with his own changes. He spent most nights in the Queen's chambers now. Not officially, everything was kept quiet, discreet, but the guards knew. The servants knew, and slowly, carefully, word was spreading through the I court. He was the Queen's human, the warmth giver, the one she trusted enough to be vulnerable with. It was overwhelming. "I don't understand why this matters so much," Ho said one evening. He was lying on the cushions in Lyra's private room while she paced nearby. "I'm just a medic. I'm nobody." Lyra stopped packing. She turned to look at him with an expression he was beginning to recognize, affection mixed with exasperation. "You truly do not see it," she said. "See what?" "What you represent." She walked to the window and looked out at the frozen plains. "The I have been alone for so long. We lost our warmth when we lost our. We have spent generations being cold, being distant, being proud because we had nothing else." She turned back to face him. "And then you appeared, a human who gave warmth freely without expecting anything in return. You showed me, you showed all of us, that warmth is still possible, that kindness is still possible, that we do not have to be cold and alone forever." Ho sat up slowly. "So I'm a symbol." "You are more than that." Lyra crossed the room and sat beside him. Her hand found his, cool scales pressing against warm skin. "You are proof that the galaxy is larger than we imagined, that there are species out there who see cold creatures and want to help them, not conquer them." Her golden eyes met his. "Do you know what they call humans now, in the courts of my empire?" Ho shook his head. "The warm ones," Lyra smiled softly. "They say humans carry fire in their blood, that your species feels no cold because the sun itself lives in your hearts." Ho laughed, embarrassed. "That's a bit dramatic." "Perhaps," Lyra squeezed his hand, "but it is changing everything. Other species are watching. They see the I, the proud, cold, fearsome I treating humans with respect, and they are beginning to think that perhaps humans are not the young fools they assumed." This was bigger than Ho could grasp. He was a medic from a small town in Korea. He had joined the peacekeeping force because he wanted to help people, not because he wanted to change galactic history. But here he was, lying in an alien queen's chambers, reshaping how the universe saw his entire species. A knock came at the door. Lyra called out in her language, and a servant entered with a message. After reading it, Lyra's expression became complex. "What is it?" Ho asked. "A formal request." Lyra set the message aside. "3 eye hospitals are asking for human medical staff. They want your warmth. They think it will help their patients heal faster." "That's good, isn't it?" "It is unprecedented." Lyra looked at him. "The Eye have never asked other species for help. We have been too proud, too certain of our own superiority. But you," she shook her head slowly, "you made me forget my pride. You made me remember what it felt like to need someone." She stood up and moved to her desk, where official documents waited. "The treaty negotiations will move forward quickly now. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, military partnerships. Everything my advisors said was impossible 3 months ago is suddenly within reach. Because of me. Because of your warmth." Lyra picked up a pen and began writing. "I am going to make you an offer, Ho. You do not have to accept, but I want you to consider it carefully." Ho waited. Lyra finished writing and turned to face him. "I want you to stay on Velar 7, not as a soldier, as a liaison, a bridge between our peoples. You would have official status, diplomatic protection, a role in shaping how humans and I work together." She paused. "And you would stay with me, not as a servant or a pet, as an equal, as someone she searched for the right word, as someone I trust." Ho felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was not a decision to make lightly. He thought of Earth, of his family, of the life he had expected to return to. "I need to contact my family," he said finally. "I need to tell them." Lyra nodded. "Of course, take whatever time you need." That night, Ho sat in the communications center of the human camp and stared at the screen. His mother's face looked back at him, confused and worried, thousands of light years away. "What do you mean you might not come home?" Ho tried to explain. The tent, the queen, the warmth, the way everything had changed. His mother listened without interrupting, her expression growing more and more strange. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that you accidentally hugged an alien queen and now the galaxy thinks humans are special." Ho laughed despite himself. "That's basically it, yes." His mother shook her head. "Only you, Ho. Only my son would change galactic politics by being too tired to read a tent number." "So what should I do?" His mother looked at him through the screen. Her eyes were soft with love and worry and something that might have been pride. "Is she good to you, this queen?" Ho thought about Lyra, about her vulnerability when they were alone, about the way she looked at him like he was something precious, about the sound of her purr when she was truly warm and happy. "Yes," he said, "she is." His mother nodded slowly. "Then stay, help her, be the warmth she needs." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "You were always so warm, Ho. Even as a baby you ran hot. Maybe this was always meant to be." Ho felt tears on his own face. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too. Now go change the galaxy, my warm-hearted son." The screen went dark. And Ho made his choice. 6 months changed everything. The Human-Eye Alliance became the most talked-about success story in galactic politics. What started as fragile treaty negotiations grew into something much larger. Trade routes opened between Earth and the Eye. Technology exchanges brought advances to both species. Human doctors worked in eye hospitals, their warm hands healing patients who had been given up for dead. And at the center of it all, a simple medic from Korea walked the halls of an alien court. Ho stood in front of the mirror in his chambers, his own chambers now, connected to the Queen's private rooms. He wore the formal clothes of a diplomatic liaison, strange fabrics in deep blues and silvers that marked his official status. He barely recognized himself. "You look uncomfortable." He turned to find Lyra standing in the doorway, watching him with an amused expression. "I feel uncomfortable," he admitted. "These clothes are designed for people with scales, not skin." Lyra walked toward him, her steps silent on the carpeted floor. She reached up and adjusted his collar, her cool fingers brushing against his neck. "You will get used to them," she said. "And if you hate them too much, you can always change back to your human things when we are alone." Ho smiled. "Are you giving me permission to be undignified in private?" "I am giving you permission to be yourself." Lyra's golden eyes softened. "That is what I love about you after all. You are always yourself, no matter who is watching." The word hit Ho like a physical force. Love, she had said love. Lyra seemed to realize what she had said. Her scales shifted color slightly, the eye equivalent of a blush. "I did not mean to say that out loud," she admitted. "But you meant it." She was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. "Yes, I meant it." Ho felt warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with body temperature. He reached out and took her hands in his. "I love you too," he said. "I think I have for a while now, I just did not know what to call it." Lyra's purr started deep in her chest. She pressed her forehead against his, a gesture of intimacy among her people that she had taught him months ago. "We are very strange," she murmured. "A cold-blooded queen and a warm-blooded medic. The galaxy does not know what to make of us." "Let them wonder." Ho kissed her forehead gently. "I do not care what the galaxy thinks." A knock at the door interrupted them. A servant announced that the delegation from the Outer Rim species had arrived for the conference. Duty called. The conference hall was packed with representatives from a dozen species. Ho had learned to recognize most of them now: the tall, thin with their translucent skin; the heavy, rock-like who communicated through vibrations; the quick, nervous with their multiple arms and constantly moving eyes. All of them were watching the humans. Captain Sung stood at the main podium, presenting humanity's proposal for an expanded alliance. Ho watched from the sidelines, still not entirely comfortable with his new role but getting better at pretending. Private appeared beside him, grinning. "Look at you," she whispered. "Fancy clothes, important position, girlfriend who rules an empire." Ho elbowed her gently. "She is not my girlfriend." "No, what would you call her?" He thought about it. "Partner, equal, the person who makes me feel like I matter." His expression softened. "That is actually beautiful. I am going to tease you about it forever." "I would expect nothing less." The conference continued. Species that had ignored humanity for centuries now asked questions, proposed partnerships, and sought advice. Something fundamental had shifted in how the galaxy saw Earth and its people. Later, Sung found Ho during a break in the proceedings. "The ambassador asked me today why humans are so trusting," the captain said. "She could not understand how our species survived being so open and warm with strangers." "What did you tell her?" Sung smiled. "I told her that our warmth is our survival, that we never could have built civilization alone, fighting each other for scraps. We survived by working together, by trusting each other, by holding each other through cold nights." He looked at Ho directly. "I told her that humanity's greatest strength is not our technology or our military. It is our capacity to care about beings we have never met, to offer warmth without expecting anything in return." Ho felt pride swell in his chest. Not pride in himself, but in his species. In all the humans throughout history who had reached out to help someone simply because they needed it. "She understood?" he asked. "She is thinking about it." Sung clapped him on the shoulder. "Give her time. You changed Queen Lyra in one night. The rest of the galaxy might take a little longer." That evening, after the conference ended and the delegates retired to their quarters, Ho stood with Lyra on the balcony outside her chambers. The frozen plains of Velar 7 stretched endlessly before them, but for once, the sky was clear. Stars burned bright overhead, and in the east, the first light of dawn was beginning to touch the horizon. Lyra pressed against his side, absorbing his warmth like she always did. Her purr was a constant vibration between them. "My advisors gave me a report today," she said. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news, mostly." She tilted her head to look at him. "Human doctors have reduced mortality rates in 3I hospitals by 20%, just by being there, just by being warm." Ho shook his head in amazement. "We did not do anything special, we just touched patients, held their hands, the things humans always do." "That is what makes it special." Lyra's voice was soft. "You do not think of your warmth as a gift, it is simply who you are. But to my people, to so many species in this galaxy, that warmth is more precious than gold." She turned to face him fully, taking both his hands in hers. "My people feared humans once," she said. "They called you fragile, short-lived, insignificant. And now—" Lyra's chest rumbled with a deep, contented purr. "Now they understand. Humans are not fragile. You are warm, and warmth changes everything." The sun rose over the frozen plains, casting gold and pink across the endless white. Ho stood in that light with an alien queen pressed against his side, feeling her scales warm from his heat, listening to her purr. He thought about the night that started it all, a wrong tent, a desperate need for warmth, a queen who had forgotten what it felt like to be held. He had changed nothing on purpose. He had simply been who he was, a medic who could not ignore someone who was cold, a human who offered warmth without thinking about politics or consequences or the vast gap between their species. And somehow, that simple kindness had changed everything. "I never expected this," he said quietly, "any of this." "Neither did I," Lyra smiled up at him. "I expected to live my life cold and alone. I expected to rule and conquer and die having never felt truly warm. And now I have you." She pressed closer, her face against his chest, her purr deepening. "Now I understand what my people lost when we lost our, not just heat but connection, not just warmth but love." Ho wrapped his arms around her and held her as the sun rose. He was no longer just a medic, no longer just a private. He was something he never expected to become, a bridge between worlds, a symbol of hope, a reminder that kindness could change the universe. And he was hers. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not the treaties or the alliances or the galactic politics, not the fame or the recognition or the changed perceptions of humanity. Just two beings from vastly different worlds, holding each other against the cold, sharing what warmth they had. That was enough. That was everything. The sun continued to rise, golden and bright, promising a new day for both their peoples. And somewhere in the human camp, a young private named looked up at the Queen's balcony, saw the two figures standing together in the dawn light, and smiled. "Not bad," she murmured to herself. "Not bad for a guy who just wanted to get some sleep." She turned and walked back to her duties, leaving the warmth giver and his queen to their moment. The galaxy was changing. And it had all started with one tired human, one empty tent, and the simple, powerful act of offering warmth to someone who needed it. Some things were worth more than politics. Some things were worth everything.